We live in a confusing world. We all are walking around every day, lost, bewildered, trying to feel our way through in the dark, alone and scared. We need guidance. We need wisdom. We need someone to light the path for us. Unfortunately, there is no shortage of people on social media ready to perform that service for us. If you want advice, there's plenty of that available. If you want moral guidance, you can have it. Lots and lots of it every day. Now, is there any reason to trust the people dispensing that moral guidance? Do they have any actual insight? Do they have wisdom? Have they even demonstrated a capacity to exercise basic common sense? On all counts, no. But they're out there anyway, and they are legion, and they are ready to tell you how to live and how to think and how to feel. TikTok influencers are particularly big on this, as you know. And here's one TikTok influencer who went viral this week as she delivered lectures and admonitions to people in the dating scene. Listen.
If you do not date fat people because you just happen to view fatness as neutral but not be particularly attracted to it, fine. That's a preference. If you don't date fat people because you think being fat means that they are gross, lazy, live an unhealthy lifestyle, or are embarrassing to be seen with in public, that's fatphobic. But to insist your preference is for people who aren't lazy, sloppy, and disgusting and unhealthy, meaning that means you prefer skinny people because all fat people are those other things, that's actually bigoted. That's actually deciding that one group is all the same because of how they look. Hope that makes sense. Have a good day.
So this is all that TikTok is now, by the way. It's just nothing but snide women speaking in the most condescending tones possible as they inform us that some normal thing is actually bigoted, actually. That's not just TikTok, of course. That's our entire society. The good news is that this woman, whose name is Tracy, I think, will permit you to refrain from dating fat people. She will, in her generosity, allow you to not have sex with the morbidly obese. She will grant you an exemption from the fat sex quota, but only if your reasons for not having sex with fat people are judged acceptable by her. So what are the reasons that are acceptable? Well, you may refrain from such sexual encounters if you have a neutral feeling about fatness, but if you somehow, for some crazy reason, actually find fatness to be off-putting and even unattractive, then you are not exempt, Tracy says. Your parole is denied. You must go out right this instant and find a fat person to sleep with. It is your duty. Now, how will this work exactly? Does Tracy think that by commanding people to stop being turned off by obesity, that they will comply and their preferences will just suddenly change? Does she think that everyone will watch her TikTok video and say, oh, you mean I'm supposed to be attracted to the morbidly obese? Well, okay then. Thank you for telling me. I'll get right on top of that, literally. Is that how she thinks it will go? The problem is that it can't go that way because that's not how the human mind works. You cannot conjure desire simply out of a sense of obligation. Now, the other way to comply, of course, would be to suppress your innate aversion and date fat people anyway because you've been guilted into it. But is that really what she wants? Even if she could berate someone into pretending to be attracted to her, would she want that? Like, how would you feel what if somebody wrote this on a Valentine's card? Roses are red, violets are blue. I'm afraid of being fatphobic, so I'm dating you. Like, it's not the most romantic sentiment, I would think. Now, the truth is that people like Tracy, they really actually do want this kind of compliance. They're not going to get it, but it's what they want. It's no different from the very similar videos we've seen from trans influencers giving the same kind of speech to people who aren't attracted to trans people. And in both cases, the people giving the speech would be perfectly happy if you dated them out of a sense of obligation and just pretended to find them attractive. In fact, if anything, they might prefer that. It's just like the LGBT activists who want to force you to bake the cake or respect the pronoun. Now, most of us would not want someone to bake us a cake to celebrate some occasion that they personally are deeply opposed to, even if we think they shouldn't be opposed to it. If they are, we wouldn't want to force them to do it. We'd prefer if they didn't. And we wouldn't want someone to pretend to affirm some sort of perception that we have about ourselves if they actually think the perception is false. And we certainly wouldn't want anyone to be romantically involved with us if, in truth, they find us deeply unattractive and viscerally unappealing. We wouldn't want any of that. But The Tracys of the world do want that. And I'm not going to attempt to plunge too deeply into their psyche and analyze their motivations. Maybe they've given up on being truly loved and respected, and so now they've convinced themselves to prefer the false performance of love and respect. Who knows what's underlying it? Whatever the reason, the point is that wielding this kind of moral blackmail against you, wielding it successfully and having you comply, makes them feel powerful. And they like that feeling. And that's what's going on here. There is something else to be learned from this. We used to hear the live and let live slogans all the time from the left, right? They used to insist that we should let people love who they love. We should let people do whatever they want in their own homes. We should mind our own business. We should, what other people do, the lifestyles they live, the people they have relationships with, none of that affects us as the logic went. We should butt out. We really shouldn't have any opinions about it. We certainly shouldn't express those opinions out loud. Now, we've known for a while that this was all a lie. The perceptive among us always knew it was a lie. And we knew it because, for one thing, we know how the left operates. They speak in euphemism. They use misdirection and red herrings. The argument they present is never the real argument. But we knew something else too, which is that nobody on earth, not one person, actually subscribes to the live and let live idea. Nobody does. Lots of people claim to. Nobody actually does. Lots of people will say that you shouldn't have opinions about the choices other people make in their private lives, but nobody really means that. They make that argument solely to justify and defend the sorts of choices that they personally think are acceptable. But it doesn't take too much prying to discover that there's a whole wide range of things that they don't think you should do, even in private. Thoughts they don't think you should think. Feelings they don't think you should indulge. Beliefs they don't think you should have. Now, they may not necessarily want the law to impose itself in these matters, though oftentimes they do, it turns out. But whatever they think about the government's role, they certainly do have all sorts of opinions about the morality and immorality and acceptability and unacceptability of private actions, thoughts, preferences, and beliefs. Everyone does. Live and let live is a sham. It is a cover used by people who aren't brave enough to defend their actual position. The left, as it turns out, has very strong beliefs about how you should conduct yourself, even in private, what sorts of priorities you should have, even what your sexual preferences ought to be. Now, especially when it comes to sex, everyone has a moral code. Everybody judges other people for how they conduct themselves in that realm, what sorts of sexual behaviors they engage in. Everybody does. The left has its own sexual moral code. Part of the code is that you're supposed to be attracted to fat people and trans people. That's their moral code. Now, it's the wrong moral code, but that's their code. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that everyone has these moral ideas and all of the ideas are equally valid. Certainly not remotely. My only point is that the whole, hey, don't judge people for what they do in private thing was always nonsense. And it's been nonsense from literally everyone who has ever said it or anything like it. We all judge people for what they do and say in private, for their preferences, for their beliefs, and so on. We all do. So rather than debating whether we should be making these sorts of judgments, it would be much more fruitful if we moved on and focused on determining what the right judgments actually are. Because contrary to popular belief, it is not wrong to judge. It is wrong to judge wrongly, as our friend Tracy has done. And that is why she is today canceled. Thanks for checking out this video. If you'd like to listen to my full podcast on the go, you can check out The Matt Walsh Show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.